So, how do you interpret 5 years? Would you have understood if your boyfriend or boy toy slept with his ex wife? Well, I've got thoughts and I'll share mine at the end. And yes, I know that some of you have been calling me out in the comments lately, and I'll address that too. Last week's episode, so good. This week, not so much. It felt like a roller coaster moving way too fast with too many loops. And what stood out the most? The way we were being pushed to kind of pick sides on a lot of different issues. Carrie versus Aidan, the glass versus the guilt, supporter versus supported. Depending on your lens, your team might have shifted mid scene. Hey, friends, I'm Vanessa de Jesus Guzman, a licensed therapist, mom coach, speaker, and host of the Free to Be Mindful podcast. Welcome back to Tea and Takeaways, where we break down your favorite shows from a therapist point of view because even fiction has real life lessons worth unpacking. And the theme I found in this episode, mindset, how we think, how we react, how we view ourselves and each other, and how fast that can shift depending on what life throws at us. So let's take it from the lightest moments to the heaviest. And we're starting off with Carrie. Because of all the characters this week, I think that Carrie has had the lightest storyline, at least the half that has to do with Duncan, the downstairs author. So the scene opened with him looking for her. And I literally paused and said, wait, what? Like now he's feeding her? It felt sudden. I thought they skipped 3 steps. But okay, I can see how this has turned into a work based friendship. And for now, that's all it is. And I kind of hope that's all it stays. And I'll say this. If it does turn romantic, things are going to get messy because he lives right downstairs. Even if it's temporary, I think it's too risky. But what I did appreciate from the two of them was their creative partnership because despite their different writing styles, they clearly do respect each other's craft. And for Carrie to admit that she was nervous about sharing her chapter, I think that takes again a certain mindset. She literally tells Duncan that his chapter was so good and that he should lower his expectations for hers. And that is a level of vulnerability because it also takes a lot to ask for feedback to begin with from someone who knows what they're doing. So in this moment, I see Carrie holding her own, but still allowing herself to be open. And I like that for her. And jumping to the end, when Duncan handed the chapter to Aidan later, was I the only one that caught a certain odd vibe? I'm not sure if it was just awkward or if there was some jealousy or protective energy happening, but there was something. And now we're moving on to the second part of Carrie's storyline, and that is what I know is going to spark debate: the glass window. The look that Carrie gave Eden when that glass shattered, I mean, if looks could kill, it was a split second, but it said so, so much. And it was as though she said, here we go again, right? Like she knew that this was just going to be one more thing in a long pattern of chaos. Now, of course, I'm all about perspective taking. So, a busted window may not seem like a big deal compared to the real world problems out there right now, but this isn't just a window, right? This is perhaps an original, likely custom glass window in her Manhattan mansion from over a century ago. So she is allowed to be mad. But here's where the whole picking sides thing starts. Yes, she did have every right to have feelings. But when Aiden walks in, he was so intent on fixing it. And here's where I jump a little bit off of her bandwagon because she comments about the glass, but then she seems to feel bad about it. And the fact is that the window has to get fixed either way, right? Regardless, new glass pane or old glass pane, it has to get fixed unless she wants to become Cinderella and invite all the birds and the squirrels in, along with Chew the cat and whatever rats are left over. The window pane needs to be fixed. But I started to shift a little bit because if you've watched previous episodes, and by the way, if this is the first one you're watching, there's one for each episode that has been released of And Just Like That this season, you know how I feel about Aiden. But I did start thinking. I started thinking, wow, look at Aiden really trying to get some points over here until he dropped the bomb, and then maybe it was just all his guilty conscience doing. But we'll come back to that part later. My takeaway for Carrie here is first with Duncan, we saw Carrie show a quieter kind of vulnerability, sharing her writing and forming a connection rooted in what seemed to be mutual respect. And it was refreshing to see her confidence and insecurity coexist without pretense. But with Aidan, we saw something very different. Carrie let out her true feelings and then pulled them back, trying to smooth it over and make it lighter, like, okay, yes, it was serious, but no, we can get over the whole window thing. And that can be frustrating and it can be disorienting for the person on the other end, in this case, Aidan. Not that I'm choosing his side, but just saying. This moment reminded us that honesty is important, but so is consistency. Because when your reactions swing from resentment to reassurance, then it's hard for the people around you to know how to show up. And that definitely happens with Carrie, but we'll get to Aiden's part at the end. Right now, we're moving on to Miranda. And Miranda is filled with joy this episode, maybe quite literally, from the dog staring at her to the sweet moments with Joy to making the jump and introducing her to Brady. It was just nice to see Miranda happy, smiling, and stable, I felt like. After so many episodes and even seasons of her being unsure, overwhelmed, or even like spinning out, this version of Miranda felt at ease and clear, and I truly love that for her. Now, her stance on not going over asking price, classic Miranda. It doesn't surprise me. Logical, practical, unbothered by emotion when it comes to business decisions, and I do respect it. It's nice to see her hold on to her values, especially when so much in her life has shifted. And yes, I initially thought that she was giving into the dogs a little bit too much, like giving them too much weight into the relationship. However, looking back, it makes sense. She really wants this to work. I want this to work for her, and she wants to be all in. And she knows that joy comes with dogs and not just metaphorically, but literally. So she's really trying. And again, I do appreciate that. So when she told Seema, I'm choosing joy at the end when she changed her mind, I was really, really thrilled. So the takeaway here on Miranda, after seasons of trying to figure out who she is, it seems like Miranda is finally making choices from a place of intention and not impulse. She's not chasing excitement like she was with Che or escaping discomfort. She's showing up as she is for someone who meets her where she's at. And it may not be flashy, but it's truly growth that she's, really becoming, really growing into herself at the age of over 50 plus. And by the way, I know that in a past episode, I had thoughts on Aidan introducing his voice to Carrie and talked about not doing that too soon because it really does damage to the kids. But I did want to mention here that I agree with Miranda that it was okay to introduce Joy to Brady now because Brady is older. It is a different situation. He's lived through his parents' divorce. He's forming his own opinions and has emotionally matured as compared to Aiden's kids, at least the youngest one. And he understands enough of what his mom is navigating. So, again, seeing Miranda bring joy into that part of her life felt appropriate and honestly kind of beautiful. And not to mention that Brady was just super duper sweet and not awkward for whatever reason. I was expecting him to be awkward. He was truly okay. So wonderful to see. And now let's move on to Seema. If you've ever been through a major life change, whether it's divorce, moving across the country, moving from a career that's been part of your identity, like I have, you know how deeply disorienting it can be. And that's where Seema is right now. Yes, she still looks fabulous. She's still Seema, but the cracks are showing a little bit. And while on the surface, things like letting go of your personal driver or giving up your vanity plates are truly first world problems, these symbols do carry meaning and it doesn't make it easy for her. They're tied to her identity, to her status, to what she's built, and what she's risking. There's a roller coaster moment when she walks out of the private car for the last time with her head held high, and she's on her way in to meet Miranda in the apartment. And she even tells Miranda, I'm the best. And that stood out to me because in the real estate field, she may be one of the best, right? And then she has her confidence, her reputation, her energy all say that she's the best. But there's a lot underneath that too. And I wonder if she was a little bit in desperation when she was talking to Miranda because she was really trying to convince her, but there seems to be a different energy underneath because without a deal, there is no money. And last week's bank scene already showed us that she's not in a place to really coast because of all of her expenses. And then that walk from the path station in heels in Newark. I mean, guys, even as a Jersey girl myself, I would not in heels. And she skips right over Uber from private driver to public transit without that middle piece there. She totally could have taken an Uber. But the thing here is not about transportation. She's really struggling with the person she was, with who she wants to become, and what she needs in order to get there. So the takeaway here is that mindset is everything when you're in transition. Seema's trying to hold on to a version of herself that's powerful, that's polished, while everything around her is just shifting. And to be fair, she's doing a pretty good job, but even the strongest of mindsets can crack under pressure because when your identity has been built on independence, on luxury and control, having to let go of even one of those pieces can really feel unraveling. This episode reminds us that resilience isn't always graceful, that sometimes it's a loud confidence paired with quiet panic, and sometimes it's stilettos on a Newark sidewalk. And sometimes it's believing in yourself even when your circumstances haven't caught up to you yet. So I hope that she continues it, but I hope it's out of a place of abundance and not desperation. Moving on to LTW. Last week, I said there was a difference between appreciating a work husband, someone you work with, and then having a work crush. And this week, it feels like LTW has officially crossed over to the crush territory because when Marion told her, "Oh, it's like you're inside my head, you're so intuitive." I had to pause because to him, it sounded like a professional praise, right? It didn't seem like there was anything more to it, but to her, it landed differently. And if Marion were a woman, this wouldn't even be a storyline. But because he's not, and because he may be attractive in LTW's eyes, it's complicated. And she's definitely reading more into it. Maybe not consciously, maybe not intentionally, but it's there. And we see that it's there because when Herbert walks in and she said, "Oh, this is my editor, married," it had me cracking up like, ma'am, you are trying too hard to sound casual and it's obviously not working. That line alone made it clear that she knows this is becoming a thing, but is it an actual thing or is it just a thing in her head? We'll have to wait and see. And then, boom, the lighthearted moment is cut short by the news of her father's passing. Now, listen, I know that the show isn't meant to be a full on drama, but the scene felt really rushed. I felt like the whole episode was rushed. And the scene in particular, the pacing, and dare I say, even the acting, even the emotional transitions, it felt a little bit off. And we're not here to dissect performances, but I just had to share what I was thinking. But what was powerful was the emotional storyline underneath it all, right? So that's what we're going to focus on. Because the fact was that Lisa missed the chance to say goodbye, or at least she believes she did, goodbye to her father because her phone was on silent. And that is heavy because then one has to live with that. And as I thought back to the putting the phone on silent moment, I couldn't help but wonder, and they didn't allude to this at all, but I had to wonder, did Lisa silence her phone because she was fully immersed in her work? Or was she subconsciously trying to create uninterrupted time with Marion, even if it was just to get to know him better? Or was it because of the crush? Or was it because she wanted to prove how serious she was about her work, even though she's the boss? All of these questions went through my head. Either way, the result is the same. She wasn't there. And now again, she's left with that feeling. And then we meet a new character who, to be honest, funny, but I was so confused. Who was she? Why was she so close to Lisa's dad? The obsessions with Michael Kors bags. funny where it seemed she was really trying to one up Lisa. And I was just really trying to keep up with it all, but it didn't land as maybe it was intended. I don't know. Another question that I sat with was Lisa wanting the service to be simple and respectful, was that for her dad or was that really for herself? Because we've seen Lisa in action before where she does carry judgment from herself, from others, especially from her mother-in-law. So that thought did cross my mind too. And her mother-in-law obviously had funny commentary during the service, as she always does. But in the end, it was sweet when her mother-in-law was so kind to her, even if just for a quick moment. And it was full of a certain amount of grace that Lisa really needed to hear in that moment. So, my takeaway for Lisa, sometimes it's not big events that break us, it's the small choices that feel impossible to take back. And obviously, Lisa didn't miss her father's death because she didn't care. And obviously, she didn't know that that was going to happen, but she missed it because she made a decision in that moment, obviously, not knowing how much it would cost her. And in a world that constantly demands us to be on for everyone, for our families, for our careers, for our own ambitions, there's always something that's going to slip. And this time it was the opportunity to say goodbye. Unfortunately, there's no do over, there's only reflection. And hopefully, she also grants herself grace. And sometimes the deepest grace comes from the most unexpected places. And that moment from her mother in law, it may have been quick, but it gave Lisa something that she didn't know she needed. And that was permission to stop carrying so much. So I do hope that she's okay as she continues to navigate this stage of grief. And moving on to Charlotte, obviously not as heavy, but there is a difference between losing a 90-year-old parent and navigating a cancer diagnosis and a spouse in their 50s. Both are heavy, obviously, but they sit differently. And how much Charlotte is holding is so much. It's almost too much. And she looks flawless in every scene. I mean, she's Charlotte after all, but emotionally, she's carrying a ton from pretending to be volunteering at Sloan Kettering and then having what I call diarrhea of the mouth and over explaining everything. You can just feel Charlotte's fear from or across the screen. She's trying to be positive, she's being present, she's being proactive for Harry without letting herself break down, but eventually that break does come. And that scene where she's trying to talk to him about everything while he's locked into the Met game, it's hilarious and relatable because Charlotte, dear, I can't compete with the Mets either. So I felt that on a personal level. But when you zoom out of that, it is hard. Being the supportive spouse is no small thing. And like I mentioned last week, when you love someone going through something this big, the emotional toll can creep up on us quietly and quickly. So the takeaway for Charlotte is that she's doing what so many of us also do when we're scared, and that is trying to keep it together on the outside while quietly unraveling on the inside. And her optimism is appreciated. Her mindset definitely helps, but that doesn't mean it isn't heavy. We don't always have to look perfect on the outside to handle everything well. And even the one offering support, again, needs support too. So at the end, when she shares the news with Carrie and the way that Carrie just holds her, that's what true friendship looks like. It's not about saying the perfect thing. It's about showing up, holding space, and reminding each other that we don't have to carry it alone. And that was really special to see. So now going back to Aidan, I have feelings. This is a heavy part. Aidan dropping the bomb that he slept with his ex wife, Kathy, and Carrie, surprisingly, but maybe not so surprisingly, not exploding. Okay, two things can coexist at the same time. He can act like a romantic with Carrie and sleep with his ex wife. And it doesn't make it right at all, but it happened. And if you notice on Carrie's part, her no overreactions when hearing the news that she was understanding, it made me think of a lot. Maybe it was her history with Big and how she cheated on Aiden with Big when Big was married. Or maybe it was that and a little bit or a lot of bit of maturity. Because yes, she's done a lot of not nice things in the past, but I truly believe that she has matured. Again, this doesn't make any of it right. I'm just saying that she understands, and that is mature of her to understand at this stage in the game, just to get, well, we weren't together. We're together, but not together. And that obviously is part of the problem. Aidan said we agreed to wait for each other, but thank goodness that Carrie came to her senses and said, so you expected not to sleep with anyone else for 5 years? I'm glad that she's realistic now. And I wonder if she would have been as realistic and answered in the same way prior to going to Virginia. I don't think so. I think that Virginia was really a wake up call to put everything in perspective. So, the takeaway here, when we're young, it's easy to think in black and white, good, bad, right, wrong. But as we age, we experience a lot, and life teaches us that things aren't always so simple. Life and love rarely fit into these neatly, nicely placed categories. And Aiden shouldn't be excused for what he did at all, but Carrie not exploding, that says everything. She didn't excuse it, but she did understand it. And my gut tells me that she wouldn't again have felt the same prior to going to Virginia, but now she sees that they do love each other and they care for each other, and she wants to be with him in 5 years, but that they are not an exclusive relationship. And while Aiden may be saying the words that allude to the idea that he thought they were waiting for 5 years, at the end, when he says, I'll call you when I get home, and Carrie responds, You are home? That confirms where his head is at. Sometimes it's not the words that we say, it's about where we feel that we truly belong. And in this case, we obviously see and hear that they're not on the same page. So, just like that, we're reminded that mindset shapes how we show up, especially when life gets messy, fast paced, and full of unexpected turns. And this episode gave us cracked glass and shifting foundations, both literal and emotional. But beneath it all, it was the quiet power of perspective. From Charlotte choosing calm in the face of fear, to Seema walking the streets of Newark in heels with her head held up high, to Miranda saying yes to joy, again, literally and figuratively, and Carrie letting go of the fairy tale again and again. And speaking of Carrie, this past week we've had many conversations in the comments. And listen, I truly appreciate it all and I welcome it respectfully. I welcome all of the conversations. Many of you called me out on calling her too nice. You reminded me that she's done some very questionable things over the years. And yes, you're absolutely right. And as I address this thought, I must share that yes, I am a licensed therapist in real life, but I don't play one on TV. Meaning that I'm bringing my lens to these episodes, but I'm not here to therapize fictional characters. This is just fun commentary and connection with you all. Carrie has been a jerk in the past 20 years. She's said rude things, she's made choices, and she's hurt a ton of people. And even in this episode, calling Duncan's meal the worst she's ever had, or asking Charlotte, Are you crying over my French doors? I mean, Carrie has always been filled of exaggerated humor. Is she self-centered? Absolutely she is. But is she a real life person? No, she's a character. And she's a character that we've watched evolve, or sometimes not so much, over the decades. And I think depending on our own experiences, that's where our opinions may differ. But all to say, I love the receipts. Keep them coming. I love the spirited back and forth, and I love that you're all in it with me. So you tell me in the comments, do you think that Seema's confidence is real or just survival mode in disguise? Was Lisa's phone silenced for work or for something more? Would you have been as understanding with Aiden? That's a big one. And do you think Carrie has matured as much as I maybe give her credit for or not? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them all. And as always, make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss next week's tea and takeaway. Thanks for joining in, and I'll see you then.